Welcome back, everyone. How everybody's having a great week so far. The first week of October. We're going to listen to another episode. You're listening and watching. You're taking us all in. You know, whole thing.
The full sensory Bodacious Rant experience.
It's like, have you ever heard of that? Like, what is that tsunami? I don't know if it's a real thing, but I guess it's like a tsunami or hurricane shot where you take a shot and then it's like they smack you or something. I forgot what. Or throw water in your face and they smack you. That's how it feels like that sometimes. So.
Or you can go down south of the border, and when you take a tequila shot, the waitress will just abuse you for a few seconds. You know, people dig that apparently.
I don't know how I'd feel like with the tequila, 'cause especially I'm sure it's hot tequila. So just we're not talking about that right now. So like
talk about
I said,
a different type of hot tequila.
Exactly, some hot tamale. Several hot tamales, really. But, so we're talking about, as everyone I'm sure has guessed it, you know that Bern and I are huge Star Wars fans. I don't know if it's obvious or not, but, you know, that's just the way it is. But we are talking about the latest Disney Plus series, Ahsoka, starring Rosario Dawson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, what's the other Mickelson brother? It's
Lars Mikkelsen.
Lars Mikkelsen, thank you. I knew it was another interesting name. And just another slew of actors. Clancy Brown's in it as well. He's always such a joy. But
like for 5 seconds.
I don't care.
He's in everything.
Brown.
We love him.
He is in everything. I do love him. He's one of my favorite actors growing up. He was in Starship Troopers. That's a classic.
Like I said, everything.
just start. This is why we do the show. Starship Flippin' Troopers. But anyways, so now that the season is over, I don't know if it's a one-off. I'm not entirely too sure on that news, so I apologize for that.
They haven't said, really.
It may very well be a one-off, which I would not mind. I feel like it ended on a good point, but at the same time, you know, it could hint at more. But needless to say, this is going to be a spoiler episode. We're going to definitely talk about some of our favorite aspects of the series, favorite characters, yada, yada, yada. So before we get started, if you haven't seen this show, binge watch it, come on back, and then listen in so you could get all nerded out with us. But please do not forget to give us a like, ring the bell, and of course subscribe. We appreciate you all and, you know, love the support. And yeah, it's a special time. You're all here.
For every like and subscribe, you save a puppy in a galaxy far, far away. Just think of it that way. You're doing your good for the day by doing the like and subscribe.
Every time I think about that, I always think about Family Guy, where it's like, come on, let's get you another Rupert. Oh, look, you buy this gorilla and you save a gorilla. If you don't, they kill one. Ooh, they're playing real hardball. I was like, that's horrible. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? So, this is not the first time we've seen Ahsoka live action. Her actually very first live action debut was in Mandalorian Season 2, episode called The Jedi, where Rosario Dawson killed it on screen.
My favorite episode still, to this day. Sorry. I just had to get
that's
that
fine.
out there.
I want to say for me, it's either that one or the Boba Fett one, just because that redeemed Boba Fett. And then his show killed it, which is like, great.
That's a very fast redemption arc.
It's just a very short-lived, really. That's
short-lived, there you go.
just and then she also was in Boba Fett, which basically was the prequel to Mando Season 3, the last couple episodes. And this time, it's mostly about her, but what made this really special was that we are revisited with the main cast of characters, except for that one giant alien guy. We saw him at the end of Mando Season
Zeb.
3.
Yeah.
Zeb, thank you.
That's right. We did see him in Mando Season 3 briefly.
Yeah, which is like, damn, he wasn't even in this or mentioned, really. That kind of sucks.
Yeah, they just, it was a throwaway line where like, yeah, he's, training new, starfighter recruits and stuff. It's like, oh, okay, well, at least you gave him lip service, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I remember I still haven't finished Rebels, so for those of you who haven't.
Technically.
For those of you who haven't, if you're like me and you haven't watched Rebels, I would say you can still watch this show. It does a decent job of kind of giving you the idea of what these characters have been through, how they know each other for the most part. But I definitely want to go back and watch it, so I think everyone should too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't really know how people who just are completely unfamiliar with Rebels are going to take it. At least I have a familiarity in terms of who the characters are and just their dynamics and stuff. I'm only seeing like episodes of Rebels here and there, but for someone who's coming into this show completely cold, I'm very curious of how well this show came across for them. Because I think they do give you the good like broad strokes of like who these people are, but I think to really understand, the characters and like their inner workings and their interpersonal relationships, I think you have to at least have some knowledge of Rebels or just have seen it. Because honestly, it does feels like this is kind of like a Rebels season 5 almost.
Oh yeah, very much so. I would definitely say it's almost like it's gotten the Ahsoka get the Mad Max treatment, where it's her name on the show, but really, she's kind of a second character or second layered character in the compared to the rest of them. By the way, it still works for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, like Mando season, like the Mando show and everything else like that. This takes place in between the original sequel and then the sequel trilogy. So the Empire is kind of whittling around. They're kind of rising up still, or there's still remnants of the Empire in the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And Ahsoka, like in Mando season 2, just a reminder for those who did watch it, she has been after Thrawn or trying to figure out where is he gone. What's he been doing. And this show definitely filled in that gap where, he's stuck in a galaxy that one character, Morgan Elsbeth, also from Mando season 2, and she was played by, what's her face? Diana Leigh and Inosanto. I probably butchered that name a little bit, but her character comes back and she's the one who's trying to bring back Thrawn. And in the end, like, Ahsoka has to list the help of her former rebellion pals, Sabine Wren, Harrison Dula,
The droid Chopper, which is awesome to see him in live action.
He was actually a really cool droid. I like Chopper a lot. And then also David Tennant's Hu Yang, which I did not get to the point in Rebels where he was actually around, so I don't know. Was he always in the show? No, he came in later seasons, right?
I think he came in the later seasons. Yeah, again, this is another one of those things that I'm not personally too familiar with, but I could only speak to David Tennant and the Hu Yang character in the show, and I thought he was great. Really cool, like take on a droid that's just kind of like, he's not one to mince words for sure, especially when it comes to Sabine and how like he kind of like looks down on her, but at the same time he's like, it's cool because he's like rooting for her and Ahsoka to get their relationship on track and stuff, but he's not afraid to be blunt when he needs to, and it's kind of fun and adds to really good comedic moments. So I thought David Tennant was great as Hu Yang.
I mean, sometimes the best mentors slash like mentors, teachers are sometimes the most blunt, and he does call it as he sees it, but he's also a remnant of a lost age, so that's kind of the cool factor, but also like, dude, get with the times. Those days are done. Just for those of you who don't know, or if you're not sure, Hu Yang was essentially a droid that helped train young Jedi at the Jedi Temple in the prime of the Clone Wars and before that, so he's been around a lot of years. He's known probably almost every Jedi that we all probably know about for the most part, unless it's from the Old Republic. I don't think he's that old, but and we're also, what makes this show so special too is that this was Ray Stevenson's last performance, and he played a really good antagonist, very gray character, and that was Balin Skull, which is such a badass name, by the way.
Yeah.
It sucks. When I started watching, I was like, man, like, it's unfortunate he did not live to see this. I mean, he died a month or two ago, so still, God rest you, Ray. You were awesome. I mean, he was a part of my childhood. Yeah, he was in King Arthur. He was the Punisher in Warzone. He's been in a lot of stuff, especially the other guys. That was one of my favorite comedies. So.
Yeah, I mean, he was great here, and the character was so good, and unfortunately, it feels like his storyline, and like now that he's passed away, we don't know what's going to happen with this character. I thought they were going to resolve that storyline by the end of the season, but it seems like it was very much one of those plot elements that they were setting up for future things, and now that he's no longer going to be a part of it, it is going to be sad to see, to not see him, and also it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of continue that storyline, maybe with the Shin character, since she's also stuck on that planet at the end too. But yeah, it's a very sad loss for sure, and this character really touched a lot of people. I think like everybody was like really really like they really were. I was seeing on online and stuff. People were really like happy with his performance and giving us a different look into what a fallen Jedi looks like. Because we have seen them in the Star Wars mythology, but none quite like him with the sort of like cold, calculated aspects of it, and where he's has a singular goal and it's not like a villain in the traditional sense.
Yeah, and he wasn't true Sith either, so that was definitely the interesting factor. Is like he's not Jedi, but he's not Sith. He's just, like I said, a very gray character. And him and his apprentice, who was let me see what her name was. I'm sorry.
The actress or the character?
Well, Ivana Sakno. I'm probably saying that wrong. Sakno. Shinhati though, she was really cool character too. They were almost very anime aspect. Like there was a lot of anime influence. I feel like with them and Ahsoka, so that's why I was really into them. And their character design was great. Like very almost traditional of like the Clone Wars age and very knight-like, but also, they definitely give off the vibes. They're not really Jedi either. So
yeah, they wouldn't they definitely wouldn't feel out of place like in like a Game of Thrones or something. Like trade out their lightsabers for like a nice broadsword or something. They definitely look of like that traditional knight sense. It's really cool. I really like their designs.
Yeah, I'm surprised like this actor wasn't. I mean, she is a little on the younger side. Like Game of Thrones, she was because she's a younger actor for sure. So, either way, I'm glad because the only things I remember seeing her in were. That one Mila Kunis movie and Kate McKinnon movie that was like I forgot what it was called, but it was like that spy comedy or something, and it was whatever. She was in that one. Yeah, I don't remember either. That's why it's not that good. It's very unmemorable. But she was also in Pacific Rim 2 Uprising, which was
never saw that one.
I mean, you should still watch it, but that's not here and there. So, and then Lars Mikkelsen plays Admiral Thrawn. And I have not gotten to the point in Rebels to see him animated, but I know he's a very, very popular and revered character in Star Wars lore. And the show like really made him a big threat. Some even have. I feel like he's just almost up there as like almost like the Emperor. Like that's how big he is essentially. And Lars Mikkelsen, I feel like played him really well. How did the live action translate for you, Burn, since you've seen the Rebel show?
I mean, I did see, the episodes or like the last few episodes where, he's heavily featured in, and it's cool that they did get Lars Mikkelsen. He voiced the character in Rebels also. So it's a nice, one of those things where, he gets to play the character in animation and live action, sort of the way Katie Sackhoff did with the Bo-Katan character. So yeah, I mean, it makes the transition pretty seamless. He kind of embodies the physicality of it perfectly. But yeah, the performance of this cold and calculating like general was really cool to see, and him like the blue skin and the red eyes is really awesome in live action. But yeah, this is a character they've kind of been building to for like the last season of like Mando. It feels like when we see I forget his name, Giancarlo Esposito's character. When the other remnants of the Empire are talking about Thrawn's
Moff Gideon.
Moff Gideon. He's coming back, but Moff Gideon wants to do his own thing, and then of course, in Mando season 2 when we do see Ahsoka, how she's looking for Thrawn, but really, it's also kind of tied into the search for Ezra. So both Ezra and Thrawn being brought back by the end of the series was really cool. Both of them. I mean, Ezra, played by Iman Esfandi, he did a really good job. He wasn't, the voice for the character in the show. This is definitely like a new casting for him, sort of like Mary Elizabeth Winstead was for the Hera character. She didn't voice that character, but I think they both slipped into these roles very well. Oh, and also too, I mean, the second lead of the show, with Sabine Wren, she did such a great job too. I'm looking here, Natasha Liu Bordizzo, I would say, she was the second lead, but she was also kind of the primary lead of the show, too. I think she did a fantastic job in the episodes that she had to carry. And I think whereas Ahsoka was sort of very distant and reserved for a lot of these episodes, Sabine's character provided a lot of the emotional core of this season, and I think Natasha did a really great job. So overall, they all did great. I know you only asked me about Thrawn's character, but I think it relates to everybody here. These characters coming from animation to live action. I thought all the actors all around did a really good job of bringing those characters to life.
Absolutely. And I'm burned. That's fine. You take it away, my dude. Um, I will say this. I think that was one of the best parts of this show, where I feel like all the actors really gave their best in this one. Like, again, I don't remember the show too much. I still have to watch it. I only got into maybe halfway through the first season, maybe not even that. But I thought Mary Elizabeth Winstead did a great job as Harrison Dula, as a new general of the New Republic. She was awesome in that. Um, and then yeah, Natasha Lee Borduzzo or Natasha Liu, I'm sorry, as Sabine Wren. I thought she looked straight ripped out of the cartoon essentially, and she was awesome to see her like that Mandalorian translate well. And let me see who else. And then just again, the Rosario Dawson continuing her role as Ahsoka was just great. The fact that I mean, I know she's definitely not the original actor for the show, for the Ahsoka character, and it was also pretty cool that Ariana Greenblatt from Barbie, from Avengers, Infinity War, and she was also in that 65 movie, but I'm not going to talk about that because that movie trash. But she also played young Ahsoka, which we'll talk about that in a little bit, or I'll talk about it a little bit. She played a young Ahsoka, which I thought she was perfect for. She definitely, again, we got to see a lot of live action moments bring back the life of the original cartoons from Clone Wars and Rebels, and that was just the creme de la creme of this. Having said all that, Byrne, before we keep going and stuff with some other things, who is your favorite character if you had to pick one?
If I had to pick one for the season, I think my favorite character was it was definitely Sabine. I really enjoyed her character journey through the season. Having to come to terms with who she is as a person. Embracing her force sensitivity, which was hinted at briefly at the end of Rebels, but they really explored it a lot more here. So having to sort of allow herself to open up to the Force. It seems like there was a lot of roadblocks, in particular, the relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine. There's sort of either tense relationship with each other was one of those things that's kind of like a mental block for her, and it's something that they both had to, sort of like get out of their own ways. And unfortunately, that for a lot of the episodes, they had to learn that the hard way, especially Ahsoka, with having to basically die and come back from that. But yeah, the way that Sabine sort of embraced that part of herself was really cool, and to see her come into her own by the end, where she is able to use the Force in like a small capacity, that was pretty cool. But I feel like she was the emotional core of this season, and I thought that she did a really great job. So I really liked her character. She wasn't one of my favorites in the Rebels show, but in this season of Ahsoka, I thought she was by far one of the best characters.
Yeah, I will say it's either her or Baylan Skoll, just because I really like the history he had, like being a Jedi during the Clone Wars, and just kind of putting everything into perspective, like the fall of the Jedi, but the rise of the Empire, downfall of the Empire. Like he's been through it all essentially. So I really liked his character, and again, Ray Stevenson, God love him. It was just great to see his final performance go on a really high note. And I don't know how, if they do decide to do a season 2, I don't know how they'll follow up with that. If they do decide to keep the Baylan Skoll character, or do they just write him off? I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see what time will tell.
Yeah.
But what I also liked about this is that it kind of just kept expanding on, I guess, the Jedi lore. Mostly through, I feel like, Ahsoka and Hu Yang, and also Baylan and Shin, where they were, just because like Baylan and Shin were, she's like a new generation of kind of Jedi, not really a Force sensitive, really. Baylan's a remnant of the past, but Ahsoka and Hu Yang are definitely kind of like the in-between, where they were very reminiscent of the Clone Wars, but Ahsoka was just trying to look towards the future, because especially I love their dialogue in the, I forgot which episode. It was kind of like it was like one of the last couple, where she's saying, this is what happened with the Jedi, like all the thousands of years of tradition and training you praise, like it led to the downfall of it, and all it took was once. So I just really like them expanding on that and kind of talking about it, because I feel like when people want to see more Jedi in Star Wars, they don't, like, they just, oh yeah, it's cool to see the lightsabers and all this and that, but there's not really a lot of like philosophy behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think Ahsoka and Balin were sort of like the two sides to the same coin, for sure. I mean, they're both Jedi's that were active during the Clone Wars era, and it's cool to see how like both of them have sort of like come to terms with that. It seems like Ahsoka for at least like the half of the season is sort of stuck in her ways and stuck in the past. She's a little bit stunted by a lot of the things that happen. I mean, I mean, it goes to show. I mean, when we saw that flashback, she was a child during these things, and it's one of those things that doesn't come across as I don't know as much as it does in the like in the animation. It doesn't come across as much, but when you see it in live action, it's like yeah, she's a child soldier, so that aspect and the fact that her former master turned out to be one of the worst people in the world, turning into Darth Vader, that sort of broke her, and so she's kind of like stuck in her ways for the most of it. And then yeah, we get to see Balin, who has sort of made peace with the fact of everything that happened in the Clone Wars was the fault of the Jedi, and he's sort of trying to move past that and move forward and look to like new beginnings. So yeah, just to see that like sort of like philosophical discussion, not so much between the characters, but what the show's discussing with them and their storylines. It was really cool to see the how they're both dealing with that aspect, and what each character is like trying to do to move forward.
Absolutely. And since you kind of brought it up, I'm going to ask you this. You know what? Let me just ask you first. I don't want to just hear myself talk the whole time. What was your favorite episode out of the whole season for the show?
I mean, it has to be the episode that Dave Filoni directed. I think it was episode 5. I think it was 5, but it's the one where we get the Clone Wars flashback. Of
God
course.
damn it! Yep, that's the same one for me too, bro.
Because it felt like that was very much the the centerpiece of the season. Sort of getting that. It was all character progression for Ahsoka, like I was talking about, where up to that point she was really stuck. Wasn't sure of like how to go about training Sabine, whether she should or not, and also that fear of also repeating the same mistakes that Anakin did. The way it handled all of that, and also getting to see the live action aspects of the Clone Wars, which we haven't seen for a while. I mean, we have seen little bits here and there in the last few shows, but to get like a full on extended sequence from her perspective with Hayden Christensen coming back as Anakin Skywalker, it was an absolute treat.
And I'm glad Hayden Christensen has got his redemption, especially in Obi-Wan, because it's very criticized in the prequel trilogy. He wasn't the best actor, and I mean he's younger too. But it's also like these actors are at the their mercy of their directors too. So it was kind of in a lot of direction back then. But his performance in Obi-Wan, and then the parts that he's in this show, it really just goes to show he was an awesome Anakin, and it kind of redeems Anakin the character too. Because while he wasn't necessarily bad throughout the Clone Wars, but how Obi-Wan kind of said, I've always been here. I've always been Darth Vader. It's like, damn. But that flashback episode, it was kind of one of those things. Like, while he was Darth Vader, he still was a good master to Ahsoka, taught her everything she knows, and I really like that line where they're revisiting the Siege of Mandalore, especially when he's like, I don't remember this, and she's like, you weren't here. Like, this was the Siege of Mandalore, where she took down Darth Maul, which was. I still want to see another live-action Darth Maul. Hopefully we will. I don't know, but I like that line of dialogue. Is like, you're part of a legacy. Like, I taught you everything I know. I was taught by everything my master knows and everything his master knows. And it's like, damn, that kind of puts into perspective. Like, wow, that is really true. Like, each person passes on their legacy essentially. But it was one of those moments. She's like, you could tell that Ariana Greenblatt's a very talented young actor. Where even with all the makeup and everything going on around him, like the war and stuff, she really does show that feeling of like she's not comfortable with that legacy after knowing what happened to Anakin. But it was one of those things, like, it's not her, it was never her fault. I know she blames herself from the Clone Wars because she was gone for basically, I think, a couple years or something after between the 6th and the last season. I don't remember. They definitely hinted she was gone for a while. So I thought it was one of those, like, she was just dealing with that guilt of, like, maybe I should have been there for him and not give up. And ever since then, like we saw in Mando Season 2, and I guess in Rebels, they definitely talked about in this show that she never took on Grogu or Sabine as apprentice because she was always worried about if she trains the next Darth Vader, is that her legacy? And I thought that was very well done in that episode. And it was also great just reliving those moments of where you, like you said, she was a kid. They both were like young people back then. Like they shouldn't have been in a war. Like, but he had to train her to be a soldier when that young. It's crazy stuff. Very well done. That definitely the best episode of the season for sure.
Yeah, it's all stuff that I'm really glad they didn't brush over, because it seemed like for a second there, like when we got introduced to her in Mando season 2, and then we get to see her a little bit in those like Book of Boba Fett episodes, it seemed like they were gonna like move past it. But I'm glad that they tackled it head on. I know Dave Filoni is very precious about this character. It's one of the ones he created. Coming into taking over like a lot of the aspects of Star Wars. So to give her the character progression that she needed, I thought that was really well done. Because yeah, I mean, the way Hu Yang put it best, she comes from a very unconventional line of Jedi. If you trace it back, from Anakin, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Darth Tyrannus, or forget
Count Dooku.
Count Dooku. Yeah, Count Dooku to Yoda. I mean, it is like a very weird, unconventional, unorthodox line of Jedi. So she isn't like the Jedi in the traditional sense, when you think about it. But at the same time, she also embodies the pure aspect of what a Jedi is supposed to be, which is a protector. She may be a wandering Ronin, but her singular goal is to protect the people that she cares about. So yeah, I mean, Ahsoka is a Jedi in the purest sense, and she kind of had to get out of her own way to realize that. So again, that's why that episode is so great, because it sort of like lets her do that, and what we get visually is just it's fantastic too, and it's just really cool. It's always cool seeing the Clone Wars stuff in live action. Just the cool factor alone, that would make it my favorite episode. But the fact that we get this great character moment is just puts the cherry on top.
Absolutely. Before we give our final rating of the season, Burn, was there anything else you wanted to kind of shout out or give praise to before we wrap it up?
I mean, I think the cinematography all across the board was fantastic. Whatever, either the location, I don't know if they did actual on-set locations, but I know they did a lot of volume stuff. But the planet Cetos, the way that they visualized it, really cool. Like the very again, there was that feeling of Game of Thrones. Just the landscape of it all looked great, and of course just the shots were just amazing and striking, and the music too by Kevin Kiner. He did a lot of the music for Clone Wars, and it's cool that they got him to do for the show, and I thought he's fantastic. I do like how they sort of we've kind of moved away from like the traditional John Williams stuff with a lot of Ludwig Göransson's work in the Mandalorian stuff, but Kevin Kiner has been sort of taking that John Williams style and adding his own flavor since season 1 of Clone Wars, and he really flexes his musical muscles in this show, and I hope he gets a movie to work on too. I know the Dave Filoni is making a movie, so hopefully Kevin Kiner does the score for him, because I thought his work here was absolutely fantastic. So on the positive aspects, that's what I do have to say. In terms of like the overall negative stuff, I think for me, Morgan Elsbeth was a little bit of a disappointment. It seemed like after her initial mission to want to look for Thrawn, she kind of takes a step back, which it's kind of hard when you're standing next to this character that's been so hyped for so long, and to get Lars Mikkelsen in there and have a great performance and stuff. But it felt like after we got to Thrawn, they didn't really know what to do with her character, and I felt like they could have added a little bit more dimension to her, because for the last few episodes she's kind of just standing there listening to Thrawn give orders and just being like, oh, okay, like he's doing his thing, he's cooking, let Thrawn cook. It's like, okay, I guess this is all we're doing with her. I guess they do have a lot to juggle with, Thrawn's character, and then we get what we get with Baylan and Shin. But yeah, I felt like that there was a lot more that could have been mined there with that character, and maybe if they had like a little bit of like conflict or something between either her and Thrawn, or her and Baylan, just differences of philosophy and differences of opinion, because they kind of hint at it a few times where Shin and Baylan are reacting to her and the Night Sister magic, like, oh, witches, like this is something that they are not vibing with. So it would have been cool to like get a little bit more from that. But as it stands now, she's there in the beginning and then just kind of disappears towards the end. So that it was a little bit disappointing to me personally in terms of like the villain aspect. And I guess with the very briefly with the Thrawn stuff, there wasn't that moment that I was hoping for where he just sort of like outsmarts everybody. It feels like his plan to get away at the end just kind of happened. And with the character that brilliant, and that like renowned for their their combat prowess, it felt like there should have been a moment where it's just like, oh dang, like he really got one over the heroes there to make the sort of him escaping at the end feel like a little bit more of like a grasp the victory just like right under their feet. But the way it happened, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, like they were sort of like loading the ship for like 3 episodes and he just kind of flew away. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but that's how it kind of like came across as like, oh, you really could have done a little bit more with I guess the overall like action of that character, I think.
That's fair. I could definitely see where you're coming from for that one. I kind of felt the same way with Admiral Thrawn. I was like, kind of hoping there'd be more of a moment where I was like, oh man, this guy's a real threat.
Like,
but it kind of played
good,
off. Yeah, like it kind of played off. It's like he's smart, but he just barely got away. So it's almost like we hyped him up, and then it's just kind of like meh. But that's fair. The only thing I will say is I kind of wish Ahsoka wasn't not sidelined so much, but I wish she wasn't so, I guess, just like the second leading character in this as much. But I really couldn't think of a way how they could do it, to be honest. So it's a very shallow critique, or at least half-cocked, I'll say, in my defense. But that's just something my gut was like, I just wish there was a little bit more Ahsoka, or a little bit more about her and her journey as a Jedi, or at least we could have maybe seen what happened with her, between Mando and this. Kind of, I don't know. It's hard to say, but that's just my only real thing. Just not enough of that. But other than that, my rating for this season, I'm definitely gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's definitely a very strong Star Wars series to really grace our presence. In all honesty, the actors were all awesome. The cast was amazing, ripped right out of the show, translated very well to live action, and I definitely want to see them either in Ahsoka season 2, or some other Star Wars series they plan on doing. I don't know. I don't know what they'll do, but just is it as good as Andor though? In my opinion, no. But at the same time, they're very different movies, especially at different points in time. So
yeah.
I don't know. But what would you give this, Berm?
Yeah, I mean, just to briefly touch on your last point, I do agree. Ahsoka could have been given a little bit more. I think what it is this show kind of suffers a little bit from tell, don't show, instead of show, don't tell. They pay a lot of lip service to things that have happened. They say, oh, these characters have a strained relationship, but we don't really get to see the straining of that relationship a little bit. So I guess they could have done a little bit more to show Ahsoka and where she is as a character, and like why in the beginning her and Sabine aren't getting along so well. Then maybe show that a little bit more throughout like the beginning few episodes of the season. I think that probably would have been a little bit better than characters talking around it. Like let's address it head on. And there's also a lot of other things that kind of like fall into that criticism of Tell Don't Show, where it's like, yeah, Mandalore was glass and Sabine lost her family and stuff. It's kind of things that they just kind of throw out there, but it's like, damn, it would have been nice to make it more of a moment with one of the characters in some capacity, I think. So yeah, I do agree with sort of like your criticisms there, and I would have liked a little bit more. Maybe these 8-episode things aren't enough. Maybe they should sort of follow the HBO seasonal thing where it's like 10 episodes. Get a few more of that a little bit more of that character development where we can see things happen between them instead of just hearing about it. So yeah, I do agree with you there. So all that being said in terms of the negatives, but the positives, we have like you said, the great actors, the fantastic cinematography, the great music. This just feels like really good Star Wars, and to come off of Book of Boba Fett and Mando season 3, which was a little bit rocky. But we then getting Andor, which was great, but sort of kind of like its own thing. It's harder to compare that to everything else without the risk of it being like completely above everything, just because of the way that show operates. It feels good to kind of get like that solid, Star Wars-y feel, that we've gotten from the movies. Basically, it has that similar vibe, and the way that the show leans into the Jedi aspect and into the mysticism, giving the fantasy back to science fantasy Star Wars. It was so well done, and Dave Filoni is really really in his bag right now. So we'll see how they continue it. Whether it's another season or in the movie that he's supposed to be doing. But all that being said, for this season of TV, I am going to give this also a 4 out of 5. Again, a lot of really cool stuff. Some, nitpicks and disappointments here and there, but not enough to detract heavily from my enjoyment of this show. I thought it was overall a really, really fun time, and 8 episodes of Star Wars that I thought was really, really cool at the end of the day.
Couldn't have said it any better, Bern. It really was. This is definitely up there as like peak Star Wars material. So I'm just glad it was good. I can't handle another Book of Boba Fett, or not that Mando season 3 was garbage, but it just fell pretty flat. I'll put it to say the least.
It was a bit generic. It didn't wow us like the first 2 seasons did.
Unfortunately, not. But like I said, so it's on Disney Plus. So for those who still have that service or think about getting it, this is definitely worth it. This and the other Star Wars shows, so check it out, and let us know in the comments. Have you finished the season? What did you think of this? Are you looking forward to see more Star Wars content, or should they take a break and put the brakes on it a little bit? We'd love to know, to keep that conversation going. But other than that, like I said, we got some good stuff coming up. Like Gen V is on Amazon right now. Let me see what else is coming out this year.
We have Loki. The first episode is coming out, I believe, this week, sometime soon. In the next few days.
I want to say it's coming out on the 6th, so that's Friday. So definitely check that out when that comes out. And again, some more movies coming out this year. So stay tuned for those reviews. And of course, as always, everyone, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for the both of us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and may the Force be with you.